Hey guys, my name is Fire, and for those of you who don't know, I'm Foxshop's brother. Now, with the end of the season in a few weeks, we're going to be looking at the things that you can do to carry solo queue games as a mid laner or an AD. Now, these are going to be the things that are key to laning, gaining early advantages, and then how to turn that early lead into a win. So first up, let's look at something that's probably the most important part of any lane, and that's going to be lane control. So every champion has a zone of control, whether it's from your tower, your abilities, or your auto attacks, and that's really how you start to deny people and get ahead in lane. Now, there are two main ways of gaining control in lane. Now, the first actually requires you to do nothing at all, but just have a natural advantage over the enemy. So for example, Graves has lane control over Vayne because his combo can just 100 to 0 her before she can do anything. But the other way of gaining control is just if they're too low to fight you. Now let's take the same example as before and just say that Graves has had a bad trade and loses half his health. Suddenly Vayne is now going to have lane control because if they were to full out fight, Vayne would win. So to show you what I mean by zones of control, let's just look at this matchup between Zed and Annie. Now this is Zed's zone of control because he can W forward, harass, and even hop to his clone, reducing the distance to his target. Now this is Annie's zone as her abilities are pretty short range. If Zed was to step into the red zone, then Annie will most likely slap him about with her combo, but if he's outside of it, then she can't do anything. Now it's important to note that these zones can change though, so for example, if Zed's W is on cooldown, then suddenly his zone of control is reduced hugely because he can no longer poke from range or gap close. The opposite can really be said for Annie too, so if you are low enough to die from one combo and she has flash available, then her zone of control suddenly gets a lot bigger. Once you are stronger in lane, then you can start to use your zone of control to deny the enemy and kill them if they come close enough. Now this kind of leads on to the second thing, which is trading. Now there are two real types of trading, and that's trading based around minions and trading based around cooldowns. So minion based trading is most useful for skill shots as a mid laner and auto attacks as an AD. So it all revolves around the fact that the enemy will put themselves in a really predictable place to kill that creep, and they'll be focusing on that creep, not on attacking you. This means that it's easier to hit skill shots as they're less likely to dodge, and in the same way they aren't likely to attack you back as they'll just be killing that minion. So cooldown based trading is more of an engage than poke, but it is going to reward you more as well. So most champions rely on abilities to do damage early on into the game, which means that anytime the ability is on cooldown, they can't use it in a fight. Now this sounds really obvious, but it's a really easy way of gaining an advantage in lane. So let's just use Graves as an example again. Now Graves is renowned for his huge burst, but if he's just used his Q to farm the wave, then that gives you roughly 10 seconds where he'll do almost 300 less damage to you in a fight. So the reason trading is so important in low elo is because once you win a few trades, you'll gain lane control that will lead you to either denying or killing the enemy. So far I've covered the laning side, which is going to allow you to get that early lead, but now we'll cover what you should actually do with it to win the game. Now this is more for mid laners, but roaming is probably the easiest way to win games once you have an advantage. Depending on the game, you're either going to want to roam to counter gank their mid or jungler, or you'll just be pushing the wave and roaming yourself. Counter ganking is pretty simple but can be really rewarding, especially if you have some sort of speed buff like Orianna or a gap closer like Gragas to get there faster. So as soon as you see their jungler ganking, you immediately run to the lane to mop up the fight. Chances are that if the enemy is fighting your team, then they aren't just going to decide to stop and run away when you move, but even if they do, you'll probably have lost 2 minions at most for the chance of getting some kills. Now roaming yourself is the most common situation, and you'll just want to push the wave and then walk backwards so they lose vision of you. Now this is really important because even if you actually don't end up roaming, the threat of doing so now that you're missing will still really help your team. So in general, it's best to roam bot lane as there is the most to gain from it. Just try and get behind the enemy laners and make sure you ping a lot. Now pinging a lot sounds really silly, but while playing on my Smurf, I found that even if people are asleep or browsing Reddit, that enough pings would eventually make them react and increase the chances of getting something out of it. Now roaming is all about personal judgment though, so roaming too much will put you behind, but it can win games easily by itself. So the best 3 things to look for are how pushed the enemy laners are, how much CC your laner has, or whether you can dive if they are low health under turret. Now objectives are really important and can give your entire team a huge advantage through the global gold and experience that they give. So it's a good habit to ask yourself, what can I do now after you kill someone, rather than just farm, and in most cases that'll either be a dragon or a tower. So there's a really easy way of securing dragons if you're ahead that is pretty obvious, but a lot of people just don't think about it. When you force the enemy out of lane by either killing them or making them low enough to have to base, then you'll have a numbers advantage on dragon and then secure it before the enemy can do anything about it. Ideally you'll need to have to wait until your jungle is at least level 5 to make this safe, and it's always best to carry a pink ward or ask your support to have one on them to avoid any smite steal attempts. Even if the enemy team does come to stop you, which happens a lot in lower elo, you can just turn, pick up a kill or 2 and either go back to dragon or base and look to repeat the process again. So taking towers is slightly different depending on if you're an AD or a mid laner. So in bot lane, if you're in control, then you will naturally push away from zoning, so the turret damage from minions and the auto attack will eventually just destroy it on its own. You can also put a lot of pressure onto the tower if you kill or force the enemy to recall, but this is only a good idea if you don't need to base yourself. So if you do need to base and you do it too late, then they're just going to get the wave to your turret and you'll end up losing CS yourself. Now taking a bot is pretty much always a good idea unless you have nothing else to do, so don't take it if Dragon is already down for example, or if the enemy laner has a lot of wave clear mid lane. Once the tower is gone, the two best options will be to secure Dragon or rotate mid and push that tower down too. So if you're going to go mid and push the tower, then the best way of doing this to make sure no one reacts is just to recall and then go straight there. This is going to avoid any wards that may see you run from bot to mid, and it means no one is going to react in time. Now in mid it's going to be slightly harder for you to take the turret on your own, but if your jungler does gank, then ask him to stay and put some damage onto the turret. This will mean that if their mid laner does eventually roam on his own, you'll have a much higher chance of taking his tower and really punishing him for doing so. Finally, I do just want to talk a little bit about wards. Now, I'm not going to give you the whole wards win game ball that a lot of people do, but rather just where to place them when you're snowballing. So every time you base mid game, you should try to pick up 2 wards and place them deep into the enemy jungle. This way you can catch people who are farming creeps or trying to rotate, and once the enemy team is 4v5 while already being behind, it's really easy to push towers or even dive. The most important thing and what these wards allow you to do is just to keep pushing and not let the enemy team farm their way back into the game. So thanks for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up and also subscribe to Fox. And you can also come and check me out on my own channel where I put out a bunch of different content like how to improve as a player and also some more entertaining stuff too. But that's all from me this time, so I'll catch you in my next video.